He steps in to block the beast's attack while Tanasha fights Miri. The beast attacks him, but Asuka throws it away and declares that he'll keep it busy. Tanasha asks him to buy time as she retreats to cast her enchantments. The prince manages to avoid the beast's attacks and kills it. Miri prepares to attack, but Tanasha finishes her enchantment, covering the area in darkness. She intentionally lets Miri escape. Tanasha becomes desperate as Miri grabs a small box but can't open it. Suddenly, Tanasha corners her, and Miri reveals that in the future she'll face the delusion she's been searching for. Tanasha lets Miri try to escape, but she's captured. A red orb emerges from the box, and Miri regrets not having more power as her soul is consumed. Tanasha wonders if she was referring to Lanik. As Asuka appears and asks if Miri is dead, Tanasha explains that her soul is gone. The next day, Tanasha wakes up next to Asuka and inquires about the object Miri tried to steal. Asuka explains that it isn't from the palace and was something his mother brought, so they don't know exactly what it is. He suddenly gets a headache, and Tanasha grows worried. Taking the opportunity, Asuka asks her to marry him. She hesitates, suggesting he should give up, but he reassures her that he can wait. Embarrassed, she promises to give him enough options to forget about her, not wanting the darkness of her past to trap him. As she grows sleepy, Asuka proposes they sleep together, and she scolds him again. The scene shifts to Lanik, the king of Kusal. Lanik destroys a village and reflects on the era he was born in. He mentions that the next step is to eliminate the 4 great nations. Meanwhile, Tanasha finishes her spell, and her familiar informs her of Lanik's actions. She wonders why he's doing this after 400 years. Tanasha goes to Asuka's room while he's asleep, contemplating how emotions and power lead to destruction. She prefers to keep her distance from love and casts a spell, causing light to cover his body. In the morning, Asuka wakes up, surprised to find red marks covering his body. Tanasha explains that she cast a curse on him to nullify the blessing of the Wii of Silence. She reveals that she finally broke his blessing, and the red marks are her blood used as a catalyst. Asuka thanks her before she leaves. Later, Tanasha becomes annoyed because she doesn't want to attend the king's birthday ball. Lazar mentions that a prince from one of the 4 nations won't be attending due to an attack by Kusal, and his sister will come to the ceremony in his place. Kusal's wizards set fire to a city near the border, which may be in retaliation for the persecution of wizards. Tanasha is concerned and asks to speak with Lazar on the balcony, where she offers him her dragon arc. Asuka doesn't understand why she's doing this, but accepts, and they kiss. At the party, Asuka promises to keep Tanasha's identity as a witch a secret. They congratulate the king on his 53rd birthday, and he later calls Tanasha to talk. Cecilia, the princess of Tyre, introduces herself to Asuka and mentions the attack by Kusal, but she reassures him there's nothing to worry about and suggests discussing it in private. The king thanks Tanasha for lifting the curse, but she explains that she was only fulfilling the pact she made with Asuka and is happy he can marry whoever he wants. As they observe Asuka with Cecilia, the king jokes about Tanasha marrying his son, which angers her. She steps outside, shocked by something, and mentions Lanik. Asuka and Cecilia are alone, and she tries to engage him in conversation about her dress, but he seems uninterested. Tanasha suddenly appears and asks Cecilia to leave, claiming she has an important matter to discuss with Asuka. Cecilia, upset, asks Asuka who Tanasha is, but he can't reveal her identity, so he introduces her as a mage. Cecilia tries to humiliate Tanasha for being a simple mage, but Tanasha threatens her, causing Cecilia to leave. Tanasha uses her blood to enchant Asuka, mentioning that she should have died 400 years ago, and asks him not to fall in love with a dead person like her. As she begins to leave, she reminds him that the future of Fasa depends on him. Asuka attempts to stop her, but becomes paralyzed. Lanik appears, claiming he's there to take Tanasha. She's happy to see him alive and hugs him. Lanik reveals he found Kusal for her and wants her to finally become his queen. He notices Asuka, but Tanasha introduces him as a man she made a pact with. Lanik believes Asuka is dangerous due to wielding the legendary sword Asha, and he plans to eliminate him. However, Tanasha stops him, saying Asuka isn't a threat because he's too weak. Lanik is confused, and she explains that she already broke his curse, so now she must leave. Asker draws his sword to face Lanik, but Tanasha defends him. As Asker realizes he has a chance to defeat Lanik thanks to her training, he braces himself for the fight. Asker, frustrated and determined, decides to go to the forest to seek answers from Laya. However, Laya appears suddenly, telling him there's no need for the trip. She's there to confirm that Tanasha is really gone. She also mentions that she had received an invitation to go to Kusal, but rejected it, thinking a witch there could bring problems to the continent. Asker wonders about the relationship between Tanasha and Lanik, and Laya explains that Tanasha has been searching for Lanik since becoming a witch, and they have now finally reunited after a long time. Asker is puzzled by Lanik's behavior, but Laya thinks he is simply jealous. Asker insists that Tanasha is irreplaceable, and he is willing to kill Lanik to bring her back. He will only let her go if she insists on being with someone else. Laya, seeing that Asker has already made up his mind, decides to reveal everything she knows about Tanasha. She shares Tanasha's full name, which shocks Asker. Her last name comes from the magical empire destroyed 400 years ago, making it clear that she was royalty. Laya explains that the kingdom chose its rulers by power, and Tanasha was separated from her parents at birth to be raised as a candidate for queen. The other candidate was Lanik, the king's son. Tanasha was more powerful than him, and it was assumed she would rule while Lanik would be her companion. However, factions in the court divided, and the king eventually fell. Tanasha's overwhelming power led to a plot by Lanik's faction to prevent her from ascending to the throne. At 13, Tanasha was stabbed by Lanik in a ritual to steal her power, but he lost control, and her magic created a whirlwind. He fled, but she healed, only to spend 3 agonizing days unable to move. That night, the entire kingdom of Tolda vanished, and its magic absorbed the souls of the people who died, creating 5 magical lakes across the continent. After recovering, Tanasha became a witch and built a tower where Tolda once stood, and has been searching for Lanik ever since. Laya doesn't know why, but Asker begins to understand the connection between Tanasha and Lanik. Laya also reveals that Tanasha deactivated Asker's magical protection to prevent him from becoming a target for Lanik and gave him her dragon arc. Asker realizes that her actions clearly show her feelings for him, and he decides to move forward with his plan to kill Lanik and retrieve Tanasha. Meanwhile, the king reveals that Kusal has declared war on the 4 nations. Tais sent 10,000 men to Kusal, but they were wiped out with minimal casualties on Kusal's side. At the same time, 5 major cities in Tyre were attacked, and all citizens disappeared, though the buildings remained intact. It all points to Tanasha as the culprit. The king tells Asker that the other kingdoms are asking for his help to get rid of her because he is the only one who can defeat her. Asker, however, refuses, believing they don't know the truth of the situation. The king grows irritated, questioning if Asker has been enchanted by Tanasha, but Asker remains steadfast in his decision. The king realizes that stubbornness runs in the family and tells Asker he will leave the decision in his hands as long as he takes over as king. Asker is surprised by this, but agrees. Meanwhile, Roost, the Prince of Tai, who was easily defeated by the wizards, decides to regroup and lead his troops again. Tanasha suddenly appears with 2 Kuskal wizards, announcing that everything will end in 2 weeks and asking Roost not to attack the wizards until then. Roost, confused, calls her a filthy mage, believing the wizard's powers disturb the world of the only true deity, Irera. Tanasha questions if he knows the history of his own kingdom, condemning Tai for countless atrocities such as killing babies and burning mothers while holding their crying children. She tells him that Tai is the only nation still believing in its superiority and warns him he will be doomed if he persists on this path before leaving. Lanik notices the 4 great nations are uniting, but he is unbothered. He reveals his plan to create a new map and, with Tanasha's help, use a spell capable of covering the entire continent. Though complex, he believes that with enough power, it will soon be done. He praises Tanasha's strength and assures her he is fine after feeling something. Later, she explains that witches are exclusively women because men's bodies cannot withstand magic. She also tells Lanik is suffering from this, but with her help, the spell can still be completed. which will drastically change the continent. Asker heads to Tai, frustrated by the delay in attacking Kuzcal. He learns that the residents of the four great nations continue to vanish, and Farsa was also attacked. He decides not to waste time any longer. Cecilia visits Asker, flirting with him, and reveals she knows the woman accompanying him, calling her the Moon Witch. Cecilia says she has seen her again. Asker demands Cecilia take him to the prince's room. Asker confronts Roost, but Tanasha appears and is surprised to see him. He asks her to return to him, but the wizards take her back, recognizing him as the bearer of Akasha. The next day, Asker assembles the soldiers for the attack, questioning why Roost has delayed it for 2 weeks. Lucretia appears after checking the villages, revealing the people haven't disappeared. Tanasha placed barriers to hide them, so they're still alive. The leaders of the other nations struggle to believe this, and suddenly the chief of the Kuzcal wizards appears. He intends to show them how Lanik will dominate the continent. He casts a spell that transports them to the ruins of the cathedral where Tanasha was stabbed. Surrounded by the enemy, Lanik makes his proposal. The continent is riddled with discrimination and conflict, and they can end it. He warns that those who refuse to submit will face divine punishment. He then reveals his ultimate goal. Tanasha appears as Lanik begins the ritual, and he holds her by the shoulder while commanding the first of the magical lakes to emerge. These 5 lakes were created from the energy of nature and the countless human souls released in the explosion of power when Tanasha became a witch. Lanik's plan is to reconnect the lakes through a composite spell, giving him control over the entire continent and even the ability to control the weather. He attempts to name each lake and complete the spell, but Tanasha expels him from the ritual and takes control for herself. Lanik asks what she's doing, and Tanasha reveals that she had spent a long time searching for him, almost crying with joy upon finding him. However, she confesses that she was only using him, as he was the one who invoked the lakes and knew their true names. She declares that the souls of the people he killed 400 years ago will be freed from the lakes. Lanik orders her to be eliminated, but her assistants and Asker protect her. Tanasha asks Asker to buy her time, needing 10 minutes to complete her spell. The Kuzcal wizards summon demons, breaking the soldiers' barriers, and the 2 forces clash. Tanasha begins to cast a double enchantment, summoning high-level demons, which surprises everyone because it was thought to be a myth. Asker faces the chief of the wizards, who dismisses him as no match, but Asker eliminates him instantly. Tanasha summons 12 spirits, commanding them to end the enemies, sparing those who no longer wish to fight. The battle ends quickly, with Lanik cursing her as he tries to escape, but is intercepted by Asker. Lanik laughs, believing she was just a tool, but Asker decides to eliminate him. Tanasha finishes the spell, releasing the souls trapped in the lakes. The leaders of the other nations ask Asker to eliminate her, but she accepts her fate as he draws his sword. However, Tanasha suddenly falls unconscious. Asker tells her she's been asleep for a week and explains that she's alive because she is now officially his fiancée. He admits that he did it to save her and reminds her she needs to stay in the castle for 6 months. Tanasha complains about not being consulted, but Asker promises to strive to be a good husband. He also reveals that Rus has decided not to attack Kuzcal and will declare it an autonomous state, showing that her plan has worked. Later, the group enters the treasury, where Tanasha decides to take the most dangerous items to her tower, leaving the rest in the palace. She finds a familiar sphere inside a box and decides to take it with her. Tanasha and Asker then visit the Farsa border, where the officer reports that everything is peaceful for now, as the neighboring nations have not made any suspicious moves. Tanasha notices a group of children playing, and the officer explains that a village was attacked a year ago. When they arrived, nearly the entire village had been massacred by bandits. The survivors were rescued, and one of them, Alice, the widow of the village chief, had lost her husband while protecting her. She has yet to gather the strength to seek revenge. Elise smiled after her husband's death as she shared a story from her village. She explained that long ago, a beautiful young woman had many suitors, but she refused all of them. One day, a group of bandits attacked the village, setting homes on fire and killing many people. At that moment, a swordsman appeared, driving the bandits away and preventing them from kidnapping the woman. Moved by his bravery, she asked him to marry her, but he refused and vanished without a trace. The children were fascinated by the story and began playing with swords, while Tanasha, intrigued, asked Elise about it. Elise admitted that the tale was true and the swordsman was the son of the woman he saved. He was the son of the woman the bandits had tried to kidnap, and he traveled to the past to save her, knowing he would never be born by changing the timeline. Elise wondered what Tanasha would do in his place, but Tanasha believed changing the past was pointless. Later, Asuka mentioned that they were given only one room, and we see Tanasha transform into a cat to avoid worrying about watching him during the night. In the middle of the night, a woman witnessed someone being eliminated by a man with glowing eyes. Tanasha woke up and explained that she had accidentally synchronized with the person's dream. She believed the dream belonged to someone with uncontrolled magical power, triggered by intense emotions. She shared that the person dreamed of someone they hated and could never forgive. The next day, while still in her cat form, Tanasha and Asuka continued visiting the borders. Suddenly, they were ambushed by a group led by Javi, who boasted of living off looting. He declared his desire for the woman he couldn't kidnap a year ago and challenged Asuka to a duel. They traveled to a mountain where Javi explained that it was a sacred place for the Idos, claiming a god had once visited there. Tanasha sensed something strange and wanted to teleport them to the castle's training field, but Asuka believed they wouldn't accept it and reassured her that he'd finish the duel quickly. He warned that if Javi's group lost, they would be forbidden from looting his kingdom again, and if they didn't comply, he would hunt them down. Elise appeared, revealing herself as the woman Javi had tried to kidnap a year ago. She recognized him as the man who killed her husband. The duel began, but Asuka easily defeated Javi, cutting off his arm. Elise, despite her hatred for him, tried to help Javi, which moved Asuka. He asked Tanasha to stop the bleeding, but her actions triggered a whirlwind. Tanasha teleported them to the kingdom, but a creature from deep within the mountain emerged. Asuka threw his sword to destroy it, but the ground split open and Tanasha fell into the abyss. Asuka jumped after her, and they both fell into the water. Tanasha, agitated, complained about getting wet in her cat form, so Asuka told her to return to her human form. She explained that she was feeling unwell due to magical interference, suggesting that a force from the earth had attacked the mana in her body. They realized they were below the sacred land of the Idos, and Asuka noticed the drawings on the walls, which appeared to tell the history of the Idos. Tanasha uncovers information about the god who attacked them, discovering that the northern deity found demons hiding among humans, leading him to kill them. The people, grateful but fearful, created a resting place for him. She explains that the term devil fiend referred to wizards in the Dark Ages, and it appears this being reacted to magic, helping them identify who the wizards were. Wizards who approached this being were psychologically and physically affected, losing control and causing harm. Asuka realizes that this deity is worshipped by Tyree and is responsible for the persecution of wizards. Tanasha decides to handle the situation on her own, acknowledging that she doesn't have Akasha, and asks Asuka to stay, but he insists on using a sword he found. Later, they find Elise, but realize she's possessed. Asuka attempts to attack her, but the sword breaks instantly. He notices that Tanasha doesn't seem well, and she explains that part of her magic isn't innate, affecting her. Tanasha thinks the drawings represent another possessed human and believes the only solution is to attack her with Akasha. They notice the sword nearby, but Asuka warns that Elise would die if they proceed. Tanasha agrees she doesn't want that outcome, but fears that if the deity reaches the surface, every wizard who approaches could lose control, causing destruction. Suddenly, Javi appears, pleading for them not to kill her, prompting Tanasha to change her plan. She takes a sphere and asks Asuka to kill her if she becomes a threat. He agrees, and she gains confidence, kissing him before beginning her plan. Tanasha consumes the sphere, drawing the deity's attention, claiming she was awakened by her magic, and introduces herself as the Azure Moon Witch. As she absorbs the deity's energy, she places it in the sphere. She knows time is short and explains the only solution is to attack her directly in the abdomen, destroying the sphere. Asuka protests, but agrees to follow through, trusting her plan will cause the least damage. After a while, Tanasha survives and asks about Elise. Aska explains she's safe in the village ruins with Javi and can return to the fortress any time. He wonders if Tanasha will sleep in her human form while he's around, and she decides to relax, trusting his self-control. However, Aska catches her off guard with a kiss, causing her to blush. The next day, Tanasha talks with Lucretia, who criticizes her reckless decision to be stabbed by Akasha. Tanasha reassures her that it was necessary to eliminate Aoria and that she trusted Aska. Lucretia isn't convinced and questions what Tanasha will do now that the contract is nearly over. Tanasha, seemingly surprised, remembers something. Elsewhere, two nobles discuss the upcoming new year, with one suggesting Aska should find a queen for a worry-free year. The other believes Tanasha would be the best choice, but a civil servant named Norman disagrees, reminding them that she is a witch. They mention she's the Queen of Tolda, but Norman insists that the country no longer exists and that he would never accept a witch as queen. Tanasha overhears him, and Palmyra, the mage of Kusal, becomes furious. But Norman repeats his stance, explaining that as long as Aska remains obsessed with Tanasha, the kingdom will have no queen. With Tanasha's contract ending soon, he advises her to resolve the matter before leaving. Tanasha doesn't get angry and instead suggests erasing Aska's memory, but Norman simply tells her to fix the situation. Palmyra is enraged, but Tanasha reminds her that witches are often seen as disasters, so it's natural for people to despise them. Later they watch the sunset, and Palmyra questions Tanasha about erasing Aska's memory. Tanasha explains she'll do it if necessary. Palmyra tries to stop her, saying that Aska would forget everything, but he'd still be happy as long as he remembered her. She wants him to live a happy life, believing he is stronger than her. Tanasha reflects on why she is still alive. Palmyra scolds her, urging her to live and die as a human. Tanasha embraces her, and Palmyra asks her to find happiness. Tanasha then visits Aska's room and gives him a sphere filled with stars for him to enjoy. Aska notices she looks sad, but she assures him she's fine. She attempts to cast a spell, but he stops her and she explains it was just a test, thinking he had grown stronger. Tanasha admits she's worried about the future. Aska suggests marrying her, but she rejects him again. He insists she stop being a witch so they can grow old together. She finds his taste in women strange, but he tells her not to speak that way about someone important to him. Suddenly, he kisses her and claims she wouldn't let him get close if she didn't like him. She admits she considers him special, and they share a hug, moved by the moment. They are about to kiss again, but they are interrupted by Lazar. Aska comments that he's getting busy, but Tanasha notices that the city is being attacked. The knights attempt to fend off the demons, and Norman is about to die, but Tanasha saves him just in time. She orders him to stay in the castle, and as he requests, promises to take care of Aska. Tanasha flies up and summons 5 of Tolda's spirits to fight the demons, using rain to douse the fires. Aska tries to help a maid, but is suddenly attacked by her. Tanasha sees him lying on the ground and becomes worried. She notices a needle in his finger, and in a panic, she realizes he has been poisoned. Lucretia identifies the poison as Aaliyah and believes there's nothing they can do but delay his death by stopping time. Tanasha, however, insists there is a way. She will transfer the poison to her body. Lucretia thinks Tanasha is crazy, but Tanasha explains that her magic is powerful, and by stopping time, she can likely endure the poison for a day until she creates antibodies. Lucretia believes she'll die, knowing Tanasha won't be able to use magic and will suffer from the poison. Tanasha requests Lucretia's help and insists that if she dies, Lucretia must erase Aska's memories. Lucretia refuses, stating that Aska must live with the guilt for the rest of his life. After hours of agonizing pain, Tanasha wakes up to find that she is cured, and everyone is relieved. Aska, still unaware, wakes up thinking he was simply sick. He has no memory of the ordeal, but feels like someone important was with him. As Aska decides to rest more, he notices the sphere, now empty. Later that day, Norman asks if Aska has chosen his queen, causing him to remember Tanasha. He searches for her and discovers a hidden room, but Lucretia is upset that Aska remembered so quickly. She explains that Tanasha had transferred the poison to herself, and miraculously, she survived despite hours of reciting spells through intense pain. Aska sees Tanasha's injuries and feels guilty, realizing it's all his fault. Afterward, Tanasha wakes up and Lucretia decides to tend to her wounds. When Tanasha visits Aska, he asks her to remove her clothes to check her healing, but she refuses, confused by his intentions. He asks her how she feels about him, and she admits he is important to her. He laughs, telling her to think more deeply. Tanasha is confused but soon understands that she cares for him because she likes him. Shocked by this realization, she initially denies it, even thinking she must kill him. But then she admits to herself that she's in love with him. Aska, surprised by her delay, draws her closer, and they share an emotional moment. Tanasha starts crying, realizing how happy she is to have met him. They spend the night together, but this makes Tanasha weaker, as she now requires more power for her spiritual magic. The next day, Aska mentions their marriage and the privileges it would grant her, but Tanasha hesitates, suggesting they remain together without marriage. He refuses, wanting her to be openly by his side. The following day, Tanasha discusses the upcoming New Year fest at the Eastern Temple. Aska explains the tradition of greeting the public on horseback, and Tanasha suggests he might need an escort. Suddenly, Lola appears, informing her of 5 children trying to enter the tower. Tanasha meets them and learns they wanted to know about the northern ice rains, which they mistakenly thought was a form of water. Shocked by their recklessness, she tells them they should focus on training first, as Aska did. She returns the children home and casts a protective surveillance spell over the kingdom. Later, Aska asks Tanasha about her reluctance to marry, and she explains his sealed magical power. She reveals that if they have a child, it will likely be a powerful mage, possibly a witch if it's a daughter. She believes his legendary sword was used to seal his power when he was young, and his parents may have done so to protect him from his own strength. Tanasha explains that her power has helped many people, but it has also caused harm. Aska suggests they can teach their child about the importance of life and the responsibility of power, asking her to give their child a chance to be born. When the festival arrives, Aska follows the ceremonial acts with Tanasha by his side, but she separates herself from the others. On their way back, she realizes they are being watched and summons lightning, but the enemy manages to escape. She also notices the children from before and takes them along, protecting them from the rain by creating snow. Aska admires the world's beauty when he is with her. They celebrate the new year together, and Tanasha later mentions how stressful the day was. Aska tries to pamper her, but she asks for time to think about marriage until their pact is concluded. Aska reveals that he spoke to his father, who admitted he married for selfish reasons and will allow them to decide for themselves. Meanwhile, the witch Leonora comments on Tanasha's weakened power, wondering if she has been with the prince, considering how reckless it was since she almost died recently. A few days later, Aska receives news about another celebration and reluctantly decides to attend. Realizing several problems have arisen, he decides to bring Tanasha along and suggests taking Pomera and Sylvia to help her dress, but she refuses, wanting to stay out of the public eye and remain his protector. Lazar reminds her that everyone in the kingdom already knows who she is, but Aska agrees to let her skip the event as long as she keeps him informed of her whereabouts. At the ball in Gadana, Tanasha reveals that she has been there before, having been asked to eliminate a demon. She decides to stay close enough for Aska to reach out if needed. The superior demon, Travis, approaches, noting Tanasha's growth and admitting that, if he were a woman, he would also want Aska for himself. Tanasha asks him to stop being creepy, and Travis reveals that he is now the Duke and the guardian of Princess Alia, who appears and scolds him. Alia apologizes to Tanasha for Travis's behavior and talks about the concerns of having a child, encouraging Tanasha to allow her child to be born. Tanasha is shocked by Alia's words, and Travis reveals Alia was born with a strange power she didn't want, which makes Tanasha sympathize with her. Afterward, Tanasha and Aska share a bath, where Aska informs her of the disappearance of the Princess of Yarda near the Gadana border, causing internal strife and potential war. He changes the topic and pulls her into the tub, asking her who she was talking to. Tanasha explains that Travis is the Demon King and reveals he was the one she was supposed to eliminate when she first came to Gadana. Aska feels a bit jealous, but Tanasha clarifies that he isn't interested in witches and was simply curious about him. In the middle of the night, demons attack, prompting Aska to wake up and fight them with Al. Tanasha helps and Al blushes at her presence. Asuka tells her to get dressed, but she impulsively chases one of the demons responsible. However, the girl manages to escape with the others. Tanasha sees Travis, who reveals that the demons also attempted to eliminate Aurelia. She then realizes she's only wearing a sheet, fearing Asuka will be mad at her in the morning. They later learn that the Prime Minister of Ghana has been eliminated, and at first, Tanasha is suspected of being the culprit due to her rash actions. She explains, though, that the one behind everything is Leonora, the witch who can't be summoned. Tanasha believes Leonora went after Asuka and Aurelia because of past mistreatment by Travis and her hostility toward them during a battle. Leonora, who is in Yada, supports the prince and is known for manipulating nobility and royalty to do her bidding. She also plans to encase an entire castle in amber. Tanasha decides to eliminate Leonora but thinks she can't do it alone. Asuka wonders if the missing princess might have information. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.